Hi, Shalom, double honest to the apostles of GMS, honest you brothers that be pushing this truth and sincerity. This is a video based on falling oil prices, and we're going to try get to the bottom of who benefits and who loses out, right? And the first thing to mention off, we already know who's in control of the finance. So so-called Jews, man, those elite banking families and all that. And they're in control of what happens on your stock markets and everything else. In fact, it's been said that the Rothschilds debate on gold prices and silver prices pretty much twice a day in what you know is London, which is a city-state, which is one of the three heads of the so-called white man's power structure, namely the economy, right, religion that comes from the Vatican, and then military that comes from America, right? And that's the three heads that, or the three cups, if you want to think about it, that America pours out for really the so-called white man, the Edomites, right, the devil, so you can understand, right, that they pour out for before the whole world, so you can understand, man, right? You start off in RT, right, and it's just talking about the slumping of the Russian ruble, right, and how it's threatening the German economy, and I will wrap it all up. It all makes sense at the end. But we start off here, as I usually do in these news based sit downs, right? It says slumping the Russian ruble, which is their currency, threatens German economy. Right? It says German companies doing business with Russia are suffering from weak ruble, as 1 in 3 companies will have to fire employees or cancel its projects. And the managing director of Association of Germany Chambers of Industry and Commerce warned. Right? It says the crisis of the Russian economy. What do you think? Hold on a minute, right? When did this crisis begin, man? This is something that's just popped into existence again, man. Right? This is something that they've just created again, right? Namely, the falling of the Russian ruble, man. And they've done that by, as you're going to see, the falling of oil prices, right? Further pushing them Russians into a corner again, man. Like I've been saying. And it's got to a stage now, man. You really gotta read in between the lines to see really what's happening out here, right? But if you see the previous videos as I've tried to put them up regarding this whole thing with America and Russia, man, you can see it. It's so clear as daylight, man. Right? It says here the crisis of the Russian economy leaves behind an even deeper break in track in the Russia-based venture of German businessmen. Right, Volker Trier said in an interview with a Bild am Sonntag newspaper. It says the managing director of international economic affairs at the Association of the German Chambers of Industry and Commerce revealed that 1 in 8 companies is considering withdrawing from Russia, right? So the breach is so many business relations is imminent, right? And we'll read on a little bit more, but pretty much the point is you can see we have a decline in the Russian economy, which is timely, right? Because we're on the precipice of a Russia-America war, and America's been putting all of these sanctions on Russia to stop them in their military, just to stop them in their tracks, right? Right? But it's really because America wants to go into every country they want to go into, and the Russians ain't having it, right? And so you have it to where now suddenly the Russian economy is all up in it's all up in flames, man. So you can understand it's declining, which all seems formulated. Right, and now they might put a spin on it in the future and say, oh, the Russians instigated the war so they can get out of their economic depression or whatever. But we already know that this man's the devil. We're going to see that in Psalms 58th chapter towards the end of this video. All right. Now let's go down and read a little bit more of this. It says in this paragraph over here, according to Trial, the weak Russian currency is hurting German business. 10% of German companies have said that their long-term Russian partners are turning away from Europe towards Asian markets, man. Right? It says 36% of companies assume that they will have to cancel their projects, right? And it says he cited the result of the poll recently carried out by German Chamber of Commerce in Russia amongst 300 German companies, right? So like I was saying, man, the arrival of this news is timely, especially for the Americans, and which leads me to assume that, I mean, you have to always, for you to understand who instigated this, you have to first find out who benefits, and who really benefits from a falling Russian economy is the Americans. Okay, have I got the documents to say, you know, the elite banking families have played their tricks, their devilish tricks on the economic markets, and reduced the price of oil? No, I don't have that documents. But purely from these three articles that we see here, and you see who benefits, then that's going to tell you who's in control of all of this, who's benefiting. Is usually who's in control. So we start off in the next article here, and it says why the Russian economy is making them down. So we've got a problem, right? We understand the problem, right? And then we see who's really affected by the issue, right? So this is from Vox, and as always, you know, I'm gonna do my best to put the articles in the description box. It says here, in the first point, I'll zoom in so you brothers can see. Right, at 1 a.m. Russia time, right, Russia central banks announced a dramatic hike in interest rates from 10.5% to 17%, which is 6.5% increase. It says this is one of the largest hikes on record, and it's part of a last-ditch effort to prevent the collapse of a Russian currency. It's like, wait, like this thing just popped out of nowhere, man. Right, the collapse of the Russian economy. It just got collapsed out of nowhere, but it really didn't, because it's all been instigated by the so-called elite banking families, and they've been doing whatever they can to put them Russians in the corner, man. Right, but like Vladimir Putin said, he said the Russian bears are going to back off, man, which coincides exactly with what it says in the scriptures. Right, so all you see in here really is a chessboard, man. Right, and now people are moving their bigger pieces, and when bigger pieces have been moved, that means pawns are out the way, right? And guess what's next, man? It's going to be checkmate, man. Right, it's going to be the end. Right, it says in theory, a dramatic rate hike should establish the credibility of a Russian resolve to defend the ruble, persuade investors to stop betting against it, and let the central bank cut rates again in the near future. It says as of early morning Eastern time on December the 16th. So this is still pretty recent. When we check out the date, today is the 21st. So that was 5 days ago. Right? It says if the rate hikes don't work, Russia will simply be saddled with an ultra-high domestic interest rate, making mortgages and other loans much more expensive, on top of the economic problems caused by falling oil prices, right? Caused by falling oil prices, and that's the reason why you're having a slump that you're having over here. All right. In addition to the sanctions that America has imposed on Russia, right? You're having the fall of oil prices, right, causing some. They're going to cause some major issues in within the Russian borders. All right, it says the Russian currency is collapsing primarily because of falling oil prices and related natural gas. It says when fossil fuels are expensive, Russian energy companies are flush with foreign dollars, right, which they turn into rubles to pay their local workers and suppliers. With energy cheaper, right, there's much less foreign money pouring in. With less foreign money coming in to buy oil, Russian official stockpiles of foreign currency is rapidly depleting, right? Notice that they said, them buying barrels in them dollars, man, right? Which is an indication as to something we're going to touch on in a little bit later. Now I'm gonna jump to this little paragraph here before I jump onto the next article. It says, "Winners and losers." One important thing to understand is that Putin's policy choice in this matters have been important implications of the distribution of wealth in Russia. Right, the collapse in the value of the ruble is a disaster for Russians, right, who have debts dominated in foreign currencies. But it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world for those who don't. It says for those who don't. It says indeed, Russian working in tourism, which it admittedly isn't that many, since Russia is mostly cold and empty, or in the country's handful of export industries that aren't oil and gas benefit for cheap currency. It says conversely, much higher interest rates will be devastating for the fortunes of Russia, who need to roll over the ruble-dominated loans, or who depend on the rate sensitive sectors in like constructions for their employment. It says many countries facing Russia's predicament would supplement interest rates hikes with capital control, financial regulations that make it hard to take large amounts of money out of Russia. Right, so this is just talking about the Russian economy. So you see here, right, now going into the consequences here, the economic consequences of global oil deflation. Right, it says a new wild card has just been introduced into an already increasingly unstable global economy. A growing world glut of oil and consequent oil price deflation. Right, now another thing comes into mind, right, on the ever increasing dependency on crude oil, right, as we move into the release of the chip, which is the RFID chip, which is the mark of the beast. Right, the more ever dependent you're going to be on your oil because you've been using more, because you got used to the easy life where oil was cheap. It's easier you're going to take on that new world order, right? It says since June 2014, the price of high grade ICE Brent crude oil has fallen more than 40%, declining from around $115 a barrel in January 14 to $64 a barrel at the end of November. That's the lowest price. That's the lowest since the bottom of 2009, of the 2009 recession. Right, the price decline has not only been deeper than expected in the normal cyclical correction, right, but also appears more than just temporary. Such predict global oil prices will fall below $60 a barrel in 2015, right, and could potentially fall as low as 40 a barrel. That occurred in the 2008 to 2009 recession. It says what effects a deep and sustained oil price deflation will have on the global economy, which is already drifting towards stagnation and simultaneously rising financial instability, is hardly being discussed and at all within Western business. Instead, oil deflation has been reported as a positive economic development, but both for advanced economies and for emerging economies, as well as global economy in general, right? So, as we're gonna see in the scriptures as well, that's how this man speaks, man. Although his words are smoother than butter, right? Deceit is in his heart, right? So right now it looks like it's a good thing and it's a positive thing, and they're putting a positive spin on the reduction of oil. Of which you're gonna think about it, man. If you're selling a product, man, you set the price of that product, right? Excuse me. Right, it says there, economists and a business person, governments in advanced economics are all given a positive spin on the falling oil prices, claiming it will mean lower cost of business and consumers, for consumers as well. Right? It says here, if I read down, lower oil prices mean lower gasoline, as you all might have gathered. Now, let's get into some more meat. Jumping down a little bit. Right, it says there are at least 3 major potential impacts on the global economic instability that will likely follow in the wake of the global oil price deflation, some of which have already begun to appear. It says the first, a more rapid appreciation of the dollar. Right, it says corresponding relative decline in currencies on a number of emerging markets, right? In particular, those depending on a commodity exports, and especially those for whom oil exports make up significant percent of our total export. There is a long historical documented relationship between falling oil prices and rising dollar. And there we have it, man. There we have it. He's the benefactor, right? They're trying to sustain that dollar for as long as possible, right? Which is what they could be doing, right? It says so global oil deflation means a rising dollar, right? So you can see here, man, who's really benefited, right? Some elite bankers, man, who deal of which that's their currency of their choosing, of which really that's a bad way to put it, because really they created all the currencies that you're seeing on the face of the planet. Right, but when you hear the dollar is the major currency. The dollar is what they're gonna turn into. They use as their chip, man. Right, the dollar is what they conduct their military under. Their military is sent out and paid in dollars, man. Right, and they buy their weapons and all of that in dollars. Right, and when they pay these different countries off, when they're conducting war, they pay them off in dollars. So a strong dollar means good business for the elite banking families. Right, because you use more dollars to make more people sell out or influence more people to do stupid things. And I say stupid, man, talking about in accordance to the scriptures. Right, like you got these niggas out here that be selling out their soul for some FRNs, man. Right, it says a second destabilizing impact from falling oil prices would be to contribute towards general deflation in Europe and Japan. Economies there have already entered recession, right? So there's already a recession in Europe and Japan, man. It says despite trillions of dollars of liquidity injections by their central banks in recent months, price levels have still fallen to 0 or less. It says oil deflation will add significantly to a general deflationary drift in both Europe and Japan. It says that in turn will likely lead to even more liquidity injections by their central banks in the form of more quantitative easing and further feeding stock markets and bond asset bubbles. And those are all bubbles, right, created by the elite banking families, man. Because those central banks, right, the American Central Bank, Federal Reserve, you can add in there, which has nothing in reserves, but all those central banks, right, have all been set up by the elite banking families. All right, and what goes to prove that when you watch all wars are bankers' wars, right? And how the line of American presidents have been put in place. And you follow that chain, and how certain ones are assassinated and certain ones have stayed in power. The ones that got assassinated were barking up against the institution of the institution, like the is that the word I'm looking for? I guess so, man. The institution of a central bank. Because with the central bank, you're basically telling the people that you're basically turning your own citizens into slaves, right? That's why Gaddafi wanted to do away with the elite bankers setting up their central bank in there, and he wanted to use his own currency, a gold-backed currency, right? So his people can actually benefit from the work they do, and they won't be slaves, man, right? And what did they do with Gaddafi? They ran up in it, man, and took the man down and painted him as the devil, right? See, the best trick that the devil played was making you believe that he didn't exist, right? And what's the best way of making it look like you don't exist? Make it out like someone else is you, man. Make someone else like a devil, man. Right? And that's what these elite bankers do, man. Right? They make it out like someone else is the bad guy. Right? It says the third decline in the financial assets tied to oil could increase the tendency towards global financial instability. Right? So in all of these cases, who's benefit, man? Those are elite banking families. If the dollar goes up, the bankers, right, the fucking wankers, right, them wankers, they really benefit from that. That's their currency. That's their chosen currency to do the vast majority of their business.